Well, hey everybody, it's Mike from Profiling Evil, and I'm out here in the northwest Utah desert at the site where DylanRounds' body was buried after he was murdered by James Brenner. Now, you can see the drone behind me. I'm going to be flying some imagery because we wanted to return to the site about 5 or 6 months after Candace and I came out, and if you remember that video, recovered additional remains from Dylan's body. And then we tried to clean over and smooth out the grave site so that it would be indistinguishable for anyone else that might come out looking for this location. So the purpose of today's video is to simply come out here, fly the area, show some before and after comparison. Not only to ease Candace's mind, but also to serve as a training component for law enforcement on what these sites might look like after a given period of time, especially in a harsh environment like that. So let's get busy and let's look into this drone and fly it and get some imagery. And then I'm going to come back and talk a little bit about some of the collateral damage in a case like this. Well, welcome to Profiling Evil. I'm back in the office now. Thanks for hitting that like and subscribe button, and please share us with all of your friends. Now, in this video, we're going to take a closer look into the importance of focusing on the facts in these criminal cases, rather than succumbing to the sensationalism that often accompanies some of the backgrounds and the people there. The tragic murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in New York City, or even that of Utah farmer DylanRounds, whose grave site where he was buried I visited today, sparked intense media coverage. But unfortunately, some social media creators have chosen to focus on the victim lifestyles or their professional choices and how that contributed to their deaths. Now, these narratives, while a part of the overall picture, shift focus away from the predatory actions of the killers, and that's where I want to focus my comments tonight. So let's discuss the need to honor victims by keeping the focus on the truth without distorting their stories for shock value. It's time to move away from the sensationalizing of the past backgrounds of victims and instead hold those responsible for these heinous crimes accountable for their actions. The true crime community has grown exponentially in recent years with podcasts, documentaries, and online forums that proliferate in response to the public's fascination with real-life criminal cases. The stories are gripping, often involving mysterious circumstances, complex motives, and tragic outcomes. However, with the rise of true crime as entertainment, a significant issue has emerged: a tendency to focus on the sensational elements of a case, often overshadowing the facts and the realities of the crime itself. Now, this shift can lead to victim blaming, misrepresentation, and the loss of perspective on the most crucial aspects of any murder case: the violation of law and the violation of humanity by the perpetrator. Focusing on the facts of a case rather than the sensationalized tributaries that often accompany these complex murder investigations is crucial for several reasons. Not only does it honor the dignity of the victim, but it also reinforces the responsibility we have in society to hold perpetrators accountable for their actions, instead of allowing the narrative to be skewed by irrelevant factors. One of the most common and harmful practices in the true crime storytelling is the fixation on the victim's lifestyle, their personal choices, and perceived quirks or oddities. When we concentrate on the choices of the victim, whether they were living a high-risk lifestyle, engaging in behaviors that some people might deem questionable, or if they possess peculiar characteristics, we inadvertently suggest that these factors played a role in their demise. Now, I want to preface that by saying, as I've said in the past, that victims who choose to live a high-risk lifestyle or choose to do high-risk things increase their risk of being victimized. But these narratives shift the focus away from the perpetrator's responsibility in these crimes. We cannot discount that in some cases, the victim does accept a riskier lifestyle or situation, and that these increased risks can increase the chance of being victimized. But no one, regardless of their poor decision-making process, deserves to be victimized. Their poor choice may have contributed to their increased risk, but it doesn't justify the victimization that they had to endure. For example, in cases involving sex trade workers or marginalized groups or individuals who are involved in illegal substance abuse, media coverage and public discussions often zero in on these aspects of their life, insinuating that the victim's occupation or addiction made them more likely to be harmed. It did increase their risk level, but the message then becomes that they were asking for it, that their choices inevitably led them to danger. And this is a fine line because it does increase their risk. But this reasoning undermines the central reality of the crime, that a predator decided to take a life, in the case of DylanRounds or in the case of Brian Thompson. And no lifestyle choice, no business decision choice or place to work justifies that act of violence. Focusing on the victim's life choices can also divert attention away from the fact that murder, by its very nature, is an extreme violation of the social contact law. No matter what a victim's lifestyle may have been, they deserve safety and respect as human beings. To prioritize their quirks or vulnerabilities over the viciousness of the crime is not only morally wrong, but also legally and socially damaging. When the victim's lifestyle becomes more important than the crime, we lose complete sight of the responsibility that lies with the person who committed the crime, in these cases, homicide. It is natural for people to be curious about the victims of true crime cases, and they often represent tragic figures whose lives were cut short. We want to understand who they were, what motivated them, and what led them into harm's way. However, there is a fine line between humanizing a victim and turning their life story into a distraction. The details of the victim's personality, their habits, or their past should be secondary to the brutal reality that they were murdered, often by a person who calculated and executed an act of irreversible violence. So when these narratives shift too far into the realm of the victim's personal life, the danger of sensationalism becomes very real. The community may become obsessed with dissecting the victim's background, personal relationships, or lifestyle instead of focusing on the concrete facts of the case. This practice, again, detracts from the broader issues of justice, accountability, and the moral imperative that we have to confront crime, especially violent crime, as a societal issue. When discussing true crime cases, the core focus should always remain on the individual who violated the law and took an innocent life. The perpetrator is the one who acted maliciously, broke social and legal boundaries, and destroyed another human being. Too often, cases devolve into discussions that give equal weight to the victim's choices and the predator's cruelty, obscuring the fact that the latter is solely the responsibility of the killer. They are responsible for the crime. The true crime community must remember that murder is not a tragedy caused by poor lifestyle choices, but it's a violent act committed by a predator who disregarded the sanctity of human life. By focusing on the actions, pattern, and psychology of the predator, we place the accountability back where it belongs, on the predator who committed the crime. By focusing on the crime itself and the brutal execution of the crime, true crime enthusiasts can actually contribute to a deeper understanding of the criminal justice system, criminal psychology, and the nature of violent crime. It also allows for a more meaningful conversation about prevention, what law enforcement's role in this process is, and how society can better protect vulnerable populations. Discussing the details of a killer's method, their manipulation, and the ways that they circumvented the law actually helps raise awareness of dangerous patterns that might prevent future tragedies. By allowing sensational elements to dominate a case doesn't just distort public perception, it can also have a tangible consequence in the criminal justice process. When the focus drifts to the irrelevant factors such as a victim's lifestyle, it can taint jury pools, influence judicial outcomes, and lead to public misjudgment. If a case is treated more like a tabloid story than a serious legal issue, there is a great risk that the real justice will be undermined by the distractions and misinformation. Furthermore, when society fixates on the most lurid and shocking details, it runs the risk of dehumanizing the victim entirely. True crime cases should serve as reminders of the consequence of violence and lawlessness, not as an entertainment vehicle for dissecting the minutiae of somebody's personal life. Reducing a murder victim to a series of scandalous choices or oddities is disrespectful, and it does little to inform the public about the real danger posed by criminals, these violent predators who commit violent crimes. The true crime community wields significant influence over how cases are discussed, understood, and remembered by the public. For this reason, it is critical that the focus remains on the facts of the crime, the viciousness of the predator, and the legal and moral responsibility of the perpetrator, holding them accountable. Allowing sensational tributaries to dominate a case ultimately does a disservice to both the victim and the justice system. Victims of crime deserve to be remembered for who they were as individuals, but their lives should not be dissected in a way that shifts the burden of the crime onto them. Instead, we must concentrate on holding perpetrators accountable for their actions and recognizing that the brutality of murder is exactly what it is, a heinous violation of both individual rights and the fabric of this society that we all belong to. By sticking to the facts and resisting the urge to sensationalize, the true crime community can honor the victims, promote justice, and prevent future tragedies. Well, I'd like to know your thoughts on this one, folks, and I hope you'll put your comments down below. Please take a moment and weigh in on each other's comments and be kind and constructive as you put your comments in there. I just love reading over your comments, and I try to respond to as many as I can. So thanks to those of you who do participate in this kind of group think that we have going on. And I want to take a moment to remind you all that my books are available on the profilingevil.com website. If you're looking for a great Christmas gift, and if you live in the United States, you can pick up this book. I'll autograph it. In fact, I'll even personalize it, and I'll ship it to you anywhere in the U.S. for free. If you live outside of the United States, just go to Amazon and you can pick it up there. You can pick up either Deceived, an investigative memoir of the Zion Society cult, or my book, She Knew No Fear. Deceived chronicles my investigation into and the ultimate takedown of a religious cult that was abusing children. And while I acknowledge the fact that the abuse occurred, the book doesn't talk a lot about the abuse. It really focuses on how this self-proclaimed prophet and his followers convinced other people to join the cult and eventually commit crimes. In the book, we explore how cult leaders recruit, maintain, and brainwash their followers. And I really think you'd enjoy reading about some of the 32 children who were rescued from this cult and how they have risen above the abuse. And please know that your purchase in part helps build a new children's advocacy center. That's a place where kids can be physically and forensically examined as part of the criminal justice process, a place where they're prepared to testify in court. And you'd love reading She Knew No Fear. It's the investigation into the murder of my great-great-grandmother, who was killed in 1891. And 130 years later, I solved her murder. I think you'd really enjoy that story. Now remember, you can find Profiling Evil on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you're into audio podcasts, please make sure you're checking out Profiling Evil's audio podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. Don't forget about Twisted Tales, our new series where we look at cases that really aren't in the top of the news, but they still are great criminal cases that we can learn criminal behavior from. Thanks for your support of Profiling Evil. We'll see you soon at the next crime scene.